Welcome to the second video of this series, where we are taking a look at the Ofgem price cap. In part 1, we outlined what this series covers, and this is part 2. This video is taking a look at why the price cap suddenly hit the headlines. We'll also take a look at some of the myths and recent comments we've seen, which have partly driven us to present this series. So Auxilione hit the newspaper headlines, sometimes being quoted on the front pages, during the summer of 2022, when we forecast that the Ofgem price cap would easily exceed £4,000 and could go as high as £6,000 when the energy wholesale prices rocketed. We also had several TV and radio news interviews to explain how we were forecasting such concerning numbers. Despite some respite in the wholesale markets in early 2023, the January 2023 cap was set at its highest ever value at £4,279. The cap has always caused some level of controversy, and none more so than when it was rising to these incredible levels after holding around £1,000 since its inception in 2019. However, the chatter of annoyance has started to get louder once again as the cap price falls more slowly than the wholesale markets in recent weeks and months, at the same time as some energy companies report their profits. This presentation is intended to help both consumers and those with energy industry experience appreciate that sometimes those headlines can be misleading, and understanding the detail is important. Before we delve into the detail, the reason why we created all that attention back in 2022 was because markets were on a staggering rise and Ofgem were making announcements that were simply scary, and the media took hold of that and made sure everyone heard. I remember the price cap announcement for October 2021 when it had risen by 12% to £1,277 compared to the April cap, which was £1,138. This was inflation busting and outrageous to be allowed to happen, but that was just the early warning sign of what was to come. Around that time, Auxilione was preparing the monitoring of the price cap, as it was already clear the next one would be a big rise once again. It's fair to say that before this time, no one really took much notice of the price cap, and the moans have only really been voiced now that it affects everyone. No one likes price rises, but these rises in the price cap have been exceptional. But people now want an immediate reset to the here and now, and sadly that's just not possible. Whilst we accept the panic it caused in 2022, and quite rightly so, fast forward to 2024 and we're now seeing further outrage with calls for the price cap to be abolished, and these are just some of the comments that we've seen in recent weeks as the price cap falls, but not as fast as the wholesale market has, and people are making unfounded assumptions as to why. So this presentation is to help delve a little bit more deeply into the price cap and help demystify some of these claims. But first, let's just comment quickly on these ones and we can then delve into the price cap more deeply. So, not fit for purpose. Well, we can say it has done its job. It was introduced in 2019 and it was to safeguard people on tariffs that would suffer from falling wholesale prices but potentially being held to high tariffs where suppliers could make unfair profits. It wasn't to know that its first job would actually be to manage the market rising. It was also not considered that we'd ever see such volatile prices. So this claim is somewhat wild, but we can more widely discuss this throughout this video series. Claims of collusion are quite amusing. The regulator and energy suppliers are not friends. Far from it, in fact. The regulator is very strict on how much money suppliers can make from the price cap customers in the prescribed formula. And note, this is a formula, and that's important here. Yes, suppliers can make more money if they take a bit of risk, but that's also now under a very close watch from the regulator too. Again, this is not a valid claim. Paying more than the wholesale price as it sits today is absolutely true, but the price cap isn't market reflective in real time. Had it been, the price caps would have been probably touching £10,000 during the crisis period, yet you were only subject to a cap of £4,300. We'll delve more deeply into why this is the case later, but again this claim is misleading. Standing charges we cover specifically in the next video, so we'll come on to that shortly. All I can say here is be careful what you wish for. Now, some energy companies do report big profit numbers, and during the crisis period we saw the likes of Shell and BP and others report billions in profit. But they're not our energy supplier. These are oil and gas exploration companies. They're typically selling their gas production close to the spot market, so as the prices have risen and so have their sales prices and in turn their margins. It's important to note they are not under price regulation and spend considerable millions at their own risk to explore in the hope that they can find something to sell. Energy suppliers, on the other hand, don't make billions. In fact, just recently, British Gas announced their profits, which was £750 million. It sounds a lot of money, but they do have around 12 million customers, so that equates to around £60 per customer for the year. But let's not forget too quickly that that profit was just 70 million in the previous year, or £6 per customer. If we average it out over the 2 years, it's £33 per customer per year. And it's really not that high when you break it down and consider the volatility and risk that these companies have to endure. The reality is there's not much money in being an energy supplier in the retail space. Now, this last one is perhaps the most concerning, and the misconception that Ofgem announced the financial values, or headline rate as we're going to refer to it, applies to everyone and you will spend no more than that value on your bills. This is perhaps where our frustration of how the cap is publicised to the general public is far from ideal. But let's then not forget, when the cap was first introduced, it wasn't really a focal point, and certainly the detail never was. The cap is just applied to the specific daily standing charge and unit rate for each unit of energy for your region, and they differ for payment types and meter types too. So your specific rates are likely to be different to mine. Complex, I know, but those that have thought that they could use as much energy as they wanted and only paid £2,500 as a limit were sadly misunderstanding the price cap and would have been shocked greatly when they saw their bills. Now, we do have people in the market such as Martin Lewis at Money Saving Expert, who has a regular TV show as well, who have tried to really hard in bringing a complex subject to simplicity to the masses, and he's done a great job in doing so. He's given fair warning to people to really take note of their energy consumption and supported the fact that the Ofgem number announces isn't a cap at all. It's just the amount a typical customer will pay over the course of a year. But there's no such customer. So that brings us to the end of part 2. Join us in part 3, where we'll look at who this typical customer is, the rates of the price cap over the last few years, and a look at regional pricing within the cap. We'll see you shortly.